Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico, how are you, mate?
I'm in anticipation.
In anticipation.
You've been in anticipation a lot lately. I'm great. I've watched. We spoke about the David Beckham thing, and there seems to be a lot of docos popping up. I watched the Robbie Williams one, and that was cool. And there was another one I watched as well. But it's great. All these sort of what do you call them? Celebrities or people in that space are being really vulnerable, blokes especially. So I think there's a lot of good stuff happening there with the docos that are coming out, and it's just, I think there's a real shift, and you can see, the last sort of 5-10 years there was all this let's fight the stigma of mental health and everything, and I commented to someone, Dan and Ed from Trademark, when I was chatting to them about it, and I was like, if we keep saying there's a stigma, there's going to keep being a stigma, even if we say let's fight the stigma or whatever. So I think a lot of great work's been done in moving away from it, and there's this beautiful acceptance now that we all have mental health, and it's important to look after it, same as our physical health. So I'm buoyed by that and what's going on, and it's great to have our guest on today who sort of popped up on our radar after listening to one of the episodes.
Absolutely, and I'm going to introduce our guest right now. Just quickly, Nick, on that, I think you're right with those documentaries. It's showing a bit more authenticity, especially from males. And I was thinking of you on Sunday. I was playing golf with a fella, and we were walking down the 14th fairway, and he goes, you guys watch that David Beckham or Robbie Williams shows on Netflix? I'm like, I know about the Beckham one because my mate Nick was talking about it. And yeah, he was interesting. He was an older fella, and he goes, I had an idea in my head of what these guys were like, and I was completely wrong. I was completely off track. So that shows what can happen when we show ourselves.
And there's older guys talking about it walking down the fairway, at golf. So it's great. It's spreading.
It's brilliant.
I'm another old guy that saw Robbie Williams.
Oh, okay, here he is.
Are you a Robbie Williams fan, Tony?
Oh, look, I don't mind a few of his songs. I went to a concert many moons ago, but I did see the doco, and I think you guys touched on a pretty important word there: vulnerability and sharing and opening up. And if you don't do the vulnerability bit and reach out and help, you're going to be in the power of trouble because nothing will change.
Yeah. I actually like a bit of Robbie Williams. He's a bit of an entertainer. I had a DVD of his live at the Albert Hall when he was doing all the old songs of like Frank Sinatra and all those guys, the Rat Pack and everything, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and brilliant performer. So Tony, before you jump in anymore, can I introduce the guest first, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Who was that speaking?
What do you mean? Man? What do you mean?
That voice. Who was it?
Oh, what?
I was setting you up to introduce him. It was.
Oh, right. Mental health advocate Tony McManus. Tony McManus is a sought-after speaker at all levels of the community for Beyond Blue and Are You OK across Southeast Australia. You may have heard me and Nick talk about those foundations in episodes past. He was the first independent chairman of a Headspace local consortium across 100+ Headspace centres across Australia. He then established the Headspace Geelong Fund. He focuses on identifying strategic mutual benefits and win-win outcomes. He was also an active supporter of the establishment of the Lara and District Community Bank. After selling his Lara-based real estate business, Tony has been passionately promoting the mental health solution of social connection through mentoring and volunteering via Connect to Grow, which I'm sure we're going to get into in the episode here. After his brother Mick took his own life, a passion in helping others with mental health issues began and has resulted in, among other things, the successful lobbying of the Geelong and Hawthorn football clubs to play annually for the AFL Beyond Blue Cup as a vehicle to promote awareness about and reduce stigma in the community about depression. He supports the Western Bulldogs Sons of the West Men's Health Project. He's a national ambassador for Beyond Blue and is a community ambassador for Are You OK? His work has been reported in the Sunday Age, the Herald Sun, ABC TV and radio at a number of times in the Geelong Advertiser. He's a regular guest on 93.9 Bay FM and now guest on the Woke Blokes podcast. That's not in the official bio, but I'm adding that. And was the nominee for the inaugural Australian Mental Health Prize in 2016. Tony is also a member of the CEO Institute and a member of the Rotary. So Tony McManus, after that very elaborate intro, a pleasure to have you on, mate.
Sounds like Tiger Woods being announced at the Masters or something.
All the credentials.
Going.
As I was halfway through, I'm like, this may be the most credentialed guest we've had on the show. Tony reached out, I believe, to you, Nico, after our very controversial episode on mental health foundations.
Yep, and sparked some wonderful conversations, and just thought it'd be great to get Tony on as a guest to go dive a bit deeper into that stuff and learn a bit more and share, with the listeners, just inform people a little bit more and get more informed ourselves. And and he's just a great guy doing great things. So I thought only good could come from having him on as a guest.
So Tony, what were your thoughts of our little, or mainly Nico's bashing of these mental health foundations?
Actually, wasn't it you bashing them, Ryan?
Little bit, yeah, it was.
Nick was moderating a bit. Look,
I don't think Nick's ever been a moderator of me, to be honest.
This is the best guest we've had yet so far. It's great.
Look, I'm very conscious of this episode not being what you guys described a few episodes ago as the most shit-ass episode or something. So let's see if we can rise above that bar. And look, I think what struck a bit of a chord to me when I listened to your podcast was the mention of Beyond Blue and another fellow who got pretty well funded. I think there is a bit of a problem with the resources for mental health across Australia. It's too easy for government, particularly with a bipartisan support, just to go, big tick, here's 100 million to Beyond Blue. And then when the smaller on-the-ground organisations who are doing really important stuff at the coalface are scratching and fundraising and tin rattling. And that's probably what struck a chord with me, that Beyond Blue has definitely got a place. And but I would just maybe think that the budget that they get is a bit out of whack with the lack of funding for on the ground organisations.
Example of that, just quickly. We have people reach out, and our first step is to have a discovery session, which I ran you through just so you knew a bit more about what we were doing. And we've had 3 people in the last week say that it's important, they want to do it, they really need to do it, but they can't afford it, and that kills us. I'm already doing some pro bono work, but we can't, keep the lights on ourselves and pay the bills and do all that sort of stuff if we keep doing work for free. So for us, on that level, we're experiencing it on a daily or weekly basis.
I think it's a really valid point. And so what do you do about it? If you are you registered as a charity? Sometimes you might be able to get some funding via that stream from philanthropic organisations. But I don't have a real solution. I'm just kind of pointing out the problem. And it shouldn't be guys like yourself having to deliver too many pro bono things. And I have the same thing, like my little Connect to Grow brand that you kindly mentioned. There's no income there. It's just something that I put up as a platform on Facebook to share while I'm trying to promote it as a message. Where simple stuff. I share stories about great volunteering experiences that I've had, or examples of other people who are doing good volunteering work in the community, just to shine the light on what they do. And a mutual acquaintance of ours, Shane Kelton, is a great one to highlight, where it's amazing how when we have these conversations, all these cross threads that come up. And, I was really chuffed when Nick and I had a good chat that the name Shane came up. And I think I'd only spoken to Shane the week before. And we should give him a bit of a plug in that spirit. He's just recently published his book, and it's been fantastic to just track him on social media and see how he's going out there and pushing the message. And I think one of the issues he had in the past is that he was doing too much pro bono stuff for a major organisation, and that's probably costing him personally. So you've really got to have a boundary. And I probably the way I get by in this space is I work 3 days a week for the Geelong Community Foundation, and then 1 day a week I'm on construction sites doing mental health support for tradies, that's actually where I'll be after we finish up here this morning. I'll be zipping down the road from the back blocks of Bacchus Marsh to the beach side of Ocean Grove, where there's a big construction site down there that I visit monthly. So by having income from 3.5 days a week, that allows me to have a bit of pro bono time, but I'd be going backwards in a hurry if I didn't have that other work.
Yeah, it's that real altruism, which comes from such a good place. But for a lot of people who get into this field, especially as advocates, they really overdo it. They book. I have a good mate as well who goes and books these speaking gigs like day after day after day after day, and then at the end of it just needs some sort of hibernation to try and recover from all that, because this type of work, it's not just I'm going and giving some sort of talk on logistics or strategy in a business or something like that. We're going into the deep topics of depression, anxiety, mental health, and then we're oftentimes after that speaking to people one-on-one who are going through something and opening up, and it takes a lot of our energy to do all that. So can you just fill us in maybe, Tony, on a bit of the connect to grow? I'm quite interested in that, obviously using these social connection and the volunteering dynamic to help people.
Before we dive into that, because it's going to lose the context, I was watching a Ram Dass going home documentary last night, where he was, after his stroke, he was passing away, and he was crying a lot. Not in the episode, I read it outside of it, but he was crying up because he hadn't set himself up for old age, and he couldn't foresee, obviously, he was going to have a stroke and need a lot of care. But all the charity work he did, all the giving, he forgot about himself or his future self. Yep. And so after he had this stroke and he was living in a home in Maui where he's doing lots of healing for himself and whatever, and he was still teaching, but everyone had to scramble, like, well, we all need to try and chip in and buy this house for him, or get this support worker in, or blah, blah, blah. So, it's really important not to neglect. You can't help others if you're in the gutter with them, is the old sort of adage. So, just wanted to...
No, good point. Often when I speak, the title of my presentation is Self First is Not Selfish. So you've got to make sure that you're fitting well in all aspects, and all the ducks are lined up in a row. Then you can give and help others and be a better parent or a better mate and so on. But if you give, the example Nick just gave was a really good example. It made me reflect on an example I heard a while ago of a guy who was in Rotary, who he might be a news agent or something like that, and he spent the bulk of his time and focus on Rotary pro bono projects, ended up losing his business, and end up retiring to have to live in a caravan. So it's pretty important to have the boundaries, so you do a bit of your passion, but you can't neglect the basics of paying the bills and putting aside a bit for retirement.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? It's like, all right, I'm gonna give this, but I can't pour from an empty cup, so I need to keep filling my cup so I can keep giving from it.
Yeah, so for me, at the age of 50, I was pretty well set up financially. I'd just sold my business, but unfortunately my ex-wife pulled the plug on our marriage. So again, at the age of 50, I was out of work, out of love, and there goes 50% of my assets. So it's been challenging, but I'd have to say, having got through that decade and just only turned 61 last week, I might have half my assets, but I'm twice as happy. And a lot of that is full credit to my our wife, Catherine, who we only tied the knot 12 months ago after.
Congrats.
Thank you. An 8-year relationship. And as we speak today, I've just got back from 9 days road trip around Sydney, Central Coast, Port Stephens, lovely part of the country. And back at work yesterday and today. So in terms of back to your question about connect to grow, I like to keep it really simple. So I'm kind of sharing stories that if they're applied or people take on the thought behind it, it might lead to a bit happier in the workplace, a bit happier with the social connection through shared experiences. One of the things that my interest in, and what attracted me to you guys too, is interest in military history. Not that I've been in the service like you guys, but there's just an interest that's evolved there. So, I connect with people who've got that kind of interest. So through that, I've been volunteering up in New Guinea, in some quite remote places, and while I'm up there, I explore what's the local military history. And a place called Aitape up the northwest coast of New Guinea, we did some volunteering on a little tropical island off the coast, but that was the location of an infamous incident from World War II where a guy called Sergeant Leonard Siflet was beheaded, and it's an infamous photo in the Australian War Memorial that I saw as a kid. But then I realised when I was up there volunteering, wow, this is where this incident happened. So we actually did a bit of research and tried to find out exactly where he might potentially be buried. Couldn't find him in the end, even though we engaged the Army's Unrecovered Casualties Unit with cyclones and tsunamis that have gone through that area. It's a bit hard to work out exactly where people thought he might have been. But it's a great experience to just try and celebrate his memory. And through that, we actually had a ceremony in the local town up there, and the local villagers renamed the town square after Leonard Siflet. And we had like an Anzac Day type service, and the Australian flag we used in that service, I brought back to Australia, and found that Leonard had a surviving brother living in a retirement village up in Ballina. So I was able to present his surviving brother a flag from where we had the service over near where he was executed. So that kind of stuff, it's just moving. And the connection with a fellow, I think he's in his 90s, it wouldn't have happened if I kind of didn't pursue my interest in military history there. I did some volunteering in a place called Popondetta, which is up near Kokoda in New Guinea, with Rotary. And the reason why I picked that location was it's only about 80k to Kokoda. So I managed to negotiate a day off, and it took us about 3 hours to go to 60k because the tracks aren't too good, and have a wander around some famous sites in the town of Kokoda itself. And because we were there with some locals, we did a lot more than you'd normally get to do when you fly in, fly out and do the Kokoda track experience, which I will avoid like the plague. I'd have to confess to being a bit too lazy to do the necessary preparation to do that trip, and age might be getting a bit past me too. But I've done 10
that sense of belonging. We've got the 5 fundamentals in the Myndfit program, and the second one is our basic human needs. And one of those basic human needs that really needs to be met is that sense of belonging, that sense of connection, that sense of community. That's why we have memberships and men's sheds and family. It takes a village to raise a child, all that sort of stuff. So isolation is massive, and I think we're still feeling the effects of COVID from lockdowns and isolation. And I won't go into the politics of it, but there is a ripple effect through adults, but also through kids as well, because those formative years of forming friendships and connection. So there's a lot of work to do, I think, in that space, which is great with what you're doing. And I was interested, maybe, as well in the conversation we had. And you said, when you first started with Beyond Blue, it was a great organisation. It was fairly small, and then, it's kept growing and growing and growing. And just can you just sort of educate us a bit about, these mental health charities and sort of where they're at now compared to maybe where they were in the past?
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's become a big bureaucracy. When I first engaged with them about 2006, 2007, they had about 24 staff, and they've now got 300. And I just question what we touched on a bit earlier about if you've got bipartisan government support, it's become fairly bureaucratic, and it's hard to work. What's the KPI for success? And you probably just look at the basic suicide rate per day in Australia. When I first started with them, it's 6 or 7. It's now 9. So obviously the population's growing. So I
not that much. It's not growing. I think it's you look at I always talk about mental health and physical health in the sort of same sentences. And if we look at the physical health statistics as well, obesity is increasing. There's so much money, trying to tackle the symptoms of obesity and the symptoms of poor mental health. But I think the question needs to be really asked and examined. Does anyone want the problem to be solved? Because you can't have a zero obesity or zero suicide. That's probably unrealistic. But the way that's all set up, it's attending to the symptoms and not the root cause. And so it sort of makes me wonder: do people want to solve the issue here, or is it just a box ticking exercise? And yes, we're dealing with it. Yes, we're attending to it, and yes, mental health is important. And there's a lot of waffling. There's a lot of talk about it, but the actioning on the root cause is, I don't know. It seems to me, from my perspective, to be not really existent.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is there's a lot of government departments trying to work in the space. Call it Department of Health, call it Beyond Blue, and then you have the private sector, what they're doing. There's some good private facilities. Another issue I really
and then there's the charities as well, though. So there's sort of 3 different sectors there, isn't there?
Yeah. I wouldn't put, say, would you call yourself? You wouldn't call yourself a charity, Nick, would you? Or
no, I'd be in the private sector, same as Ryan.
So it's very challenging, and part of the problem, like I said earlier, is it's too easy for government to say there's 100 million to say Beyond Blue. Tick. What else have we got to sort out? Whereas that's not really.
Well, $100 million with 300 people, like that's a pretty big asset. 100 million, 300 people are dedicated to. I don't even know what they're dedicated to. Like, I hear so many interesting concepts like fighting mental health. Like that's just completely.
Well, it's important that we all know the metric, isn't it? Like, is it suicide? Is it the amount of people doing sessions? Like, I know from the addiction treatment industry, it was just the people through the door. It doesn't matter if they're the same people coming back in 3 months' time. It was literally the people through the door as opposed to outcomes. So it'd be great if we could know what the actual metric is for success here, as opposed to just handing out the money and going, well, I'm sure it'll go to good use.
And if we can all get on the same page and all come to an agreement that fighting mental health is silly, it's just, you've got to stop using that silly language. I heard an expert the other day, in inverted commas. As soon as you think you're an expert, you're done, I think. And he said, anxiety is a mental illness, and it was such a blanket black and white. And I was like, if these kind of people are getting airtime and putting that message out there, that's just going to send us backwards, because anxiety is not mental illness. Anxiety is a very healthy emotional response to have in certain situations. It becomes problematic if we're in fight flight for too long, and can create poor mental health, and debilitating mental illness can occur, as I've experienced. But anxiety and depression are not. It's not mental health, but they're not mental. They're not just mental illnesses. And Mandela quote, education is the most powerful weapon we have in which to change the world. That's where I feel the missing link is in educating and speaking about it in proper context, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, I think there's a big focus on the acute mental health space with research and what's
That's the symptom. That's the symptom, though.
Yeah, and I take it back to try and keep the solution simple. And one of the examples I can give you is that tackling intergenerational poverty, single parent families. I got involved in a program called L, the number 2P, which is taking learner drivers and helping them become probationary drivers in families where they either don't have a car or the parents don't drive. And I did that program locally here in Bacchus Marsh, and I got matched up with the kid who's a Tongan background, dad's in New Zealand, mum's here, doesn't drive. So I think we achieved some great goals. It wasn't just giving him the 100 hours in the car. There was 100 hours of talk time too. So we're involved into a really good mentoring relationship. And I shared with him the template that I give out whenever I do a session that highlights yourself, relationships, finances, health, both physical and mental, what you do in the workplace or school place, and what you do in your leisure time. I said, look, any time you want to talk about any of the issues in these boxes, it's like an agenda. Go for it. And we'd have some great discussions. And over because it straddled COVID, it took about 3 years to do it. But I kind of got the win-win stuff happening out of it. I mentioned earlier my interest in military history. Living in Bacchus Marsh, I knew up at Seymour there was a Vietnam War Memorial, 2-hour drive. Nowhere near my better half would want to go for a 2-hour drive to look at an old tank and helicopter on a pole up in Seymour. But I tell you what, the young bloke was more than happy because 2 hours there, 2 hours back, there's 4 hours off his 120 hours. So you kind of get that combining your interest, your passion thing happening with helping someone else. So you get that benefit, the warm, fuzzy feeling back to you, helping him along his way. And we finished about 18 months ago, and we still ring every now and then. And so that, to me, we need more of that. Like I spoke to a Rotary Club, and I mentioned that example, and they said, we give a fuel voucher to that L2P program. I said, have you considered doing some mentoring and actually jump in the car and do some of the driver training with them too? So which to me was a really good fit with Rotary because of that, giving back to local projects in the community as well as overseas stuff. So
people just think that money is going to solve all the problem. No, it's great that win-win situation. I'm doing some charity work for 3 days leading up to Christmas down on the Bellarine Peninsula.
Cool.
I'm taking this guy out on the golf course for 3 days. He's got some mental issues, and just taking him out there. And I love golf, and I'm going to take him out in the links and try and
How generous of you! How generous of you!
I know. I'm altruistic at my core. And,
you do know you've got your work cut out with that one.
Well, he's an interesting guy. So I'm going to have to try and build some rapport there with him. He's got a lot of defenses up. He's going to be an interesting character. So I'll let you know how we go.
That's just raised a bad thought for me, Nick. Last time I played in a golf game, I won the Naga Award. 10 years ago, I have not played around since, but one of my daughters is getting married next year, and guess what the Bucks party is going to be?
Golf course. Great. Get back on the bike.
What's the Naga Award?
Not a golfer's arsehole. So
my
bottom of the list, it wasn't the winner.
The guy who I'm mentoring for these 3 days, he's probably got a few of those in his trophy cabinet. So actually, is there any on the shelf behind him there? No, there may be one up there somewhere.
All books about mindfulness and mental health. Yet I need help with my golf game. Can I just circle back to something real quick that you said earlier, Tony? It's just been playing on my mind since you said it, but you were talking about, going through a separation at 50 and whatnot, and how things are going now with your new wife. And you just said, I've got half the assets, but I'm twice as happy. And
Yep.
I think that we should be really looking at happiness and meaning, which is, you know, you going out and volunteering, doing the driving work with that kid and everything as our assets as well. Like we grow up and ideally we are accumulating our assets and reducing our liabilities. But if you look at our happiness, our peace and our meaning in life as an asset as well, I mean, that's even a more important category than the other stuff.
So how come people struggle to invest in their own? They spend so much money on pleasure instead of learning how to be happy, and there's a massive difference between the two. And, you know, the people who I alluded to earlier who said they can't afford it, and they probably genuinely can't. But I love to also play around with, well, how much how much the program costs $2,600 for 12 weeks, and that's the gift that keeps on giving for life.
Yep.
It's pretty cheap, I think, in the grand scheme of things. How quickly would you spend $2,600 on fixing your car or on putting your kid through a holiday program? Or, you know, people will spend $2,600 on other stuff like that, but when it comes to themselves, they don't see where you're coming from, Hassan. What you just were talking about is this is an asset. This needs to be running really well before everything else is okay.
Yeah,
it's a really good point. The concept of investing in oneself, I haven't got time. You know, the general explanation.
Well, that's just saying I'm not a priority. That's all. When someone says I don't have time, they're saying it's not a priority right now.
They're making themselves a low priority, and you know, it's a habit that needs to be created. If you look at, you know, going to a gym, looking after physical health, you do get the spin-off mental health benefit, but, you know, that's a positive habit. I can't confess to being a gym junkie, but the best thing for me for my mental health is just going for a walk in the morning, and it changes the mood from, you know, wake up, sense of dread some days, try not to think about it. And you've probably seen that video from the American general speaking to a class of recruits talking about the importance of making your bed first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it's on my website.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. And then I'm out of there. And by the time I get back from walk, coffee, stir up the people in the local cafe, mood is much better for taking on the day.
Yeah, well, you're getting, I mean, a little bit of exercise, a little bit of social connection, a little bit of sunlight if you're walking outside. So you're ticking a lot of boxes. And me and Nick, many times, as you can tick some of those boxes to start your day, then you just set the tone for the rest of the day and you're in such a better place than immediately, you know, waking up in bed, Instagram, cortisol, adrenaline, and you kind of set the tone for being on edge all day.
So let's call that sort of level one stuff. That's really important, and ticking those boxes will set you up for a great day. But then behind that, there's sort of level two, and that's sort of where I sit in the work that I do, and Hass as well, is that it's that, okay, now tune in to what's going on within you, you know, because you can have social connection, but if you start complaining about the weather or the news or whatever, and you go down that destructive path that we talk about, that's going to shift you and take you out of a certain state, create very different chemical experience within you, and have a ripple effect through your day. So level one, tick the boxes, but level two, it's being really tuned in to what you're saying, whether it's verbally, externally, or whether it's the little voice in your head. Everyone's got a voice in their head, haven't they? It's not just me. Yeah. Okay. No. Oh shit. And so listening to that, and then really being there, but awareness isn't enough. We know what to do, what to listen in for. So when we hear ourselves starting to complain, you know, complaining literally causes brain damage. So when you hear yourself complain, that level two work is like, oh, now I'm in a position to pull myself up and to shift out of that. So there's a few different levels we can work on simultaneously.
Now, I think that what you do in that space of psychotherapy is fantastic. You know, I think it's kind of in between that heavy acute stuff. It's almost, you hear that phrase, the missing middle ground of, you know, the work that needs to be done in that space, and simple stuff. Like,
well, I'm dealing with acute people. I mean, we're both dealing with people in acute situations. I've had someone come in and their whole yeah, their whole world's just falling apart because they're going through a separation, or someone in their life is just, you know, in deep suffering, or yeah, life's happening to a massive degree for these people, and they're spinning and spiraling, and you know, we sort of attend to them the same as we attend to everyone. This is how, you know, they're a pilot, the plane's going down, you've got the hands on the control. This is what you need to do to start correcting things and getting things back on track, and not waiting for them to crash and to hit rock bottom and then to try and clean up that mess, but to catch them on the way down and give them what is required, what we all need, but not. I've talked to a lot of clients lately about how we all have a very powerful mind, and mine's so powerful it prevented me from opening the door. You know, it kept me safe. Wonderful. And I'm so passionate about doing this work because an untrained and an undisciplined mind left to its own device is going to cause, naturally, it's going to cause a lot of unpleasant experiences for the self and for others.
Yeah.
So learning how powerful our mind is, training it, disciplining it with a few little things each day or whatever. It's just, if more people can get hold of their own mental health and start attending to it, those numbers that we were talking about earlier, the 9 a day, that's naturally going to drop. But I don't see enough people doing the work, as we call it. What are your thoughts on that, Huss?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's also, there's many factors, right? We all have an individual responsibility to ourselves and our physical and our mental health. And then there's also the societal factors. And before, when you were comparing physical and mental health, it made me think, like, you're right, like obesity is rife. It's one of the biggest killers we have. I think for the first time in human history, more people around the world are dying from overeating as opposed to starvation. And it's because it's like the easiest to get and the cheapest and the most convenient foods to eat is processed garbage. And so many people are just living just so their heads above water. And so they're feeding themselves and their children on that stuff. And so physical health, which also impacts our mental health, gets affected. Then from a mental health point of view, what's the easiest thing to do? Is to jump on social media and compare our lives to other people or their highlight reel of their lives, which is a very convenient and easy thing to do to get a dopamine hit, yet it's leading to more and more poor mental health. So I just see physical and mental health moving together in a very negative direction. And yes, individual responsibility needs to be taken, but also, you know, from government and all of these large bodies, I think, you know, some real changes need to be made. And poverty. So sorry to jump in, but Tony, you also mentioned, you know, poverty and these, you know, poverty-stricken cultural groups and certain areas, homelessness, all of that plays into it. You know, Dr. Carl Hart, who's one of my guys who I've read a lot of his books on addiction, and he got into the space because he grew up, I think it was Detroit, and he thought the crack cocaine was the big problem with Detroit and the neighborhoods that he grew up in. So he became a neuroscientist and a researcher in that, because he wanted to eradicate, you know, the drugs and that problem. And as he got into it more and more, he realized drugs weren't the problem at all. The poverty and the groups that were barely scraping by, and the problems were around long before crack cocaine hit that town. And so there's so many largest macro problems to look at.
But also, fathers not being present in the young boys' lives is a massive problem. And you know, Johan Hari's work, it's not the drugs, it's not the addiction, it's that sense of belonging that we keep coming back to. So disconnection is massive. But once again, those basic human needs, they're your needs. They're yours to. If you're feeling lonely, it's for you to pick up the phone and ring a friend and organize to catch up with someone, or to go to a men's group or a community event, or start volunteering. You know, we need this self-agency, I think, is really lacking.
It's what, when Tony, you were talking about the driving thing and everything and the mentoring, it just had me envision that father figure. And it's something that is very much needed, because I can't tell you the amount of people that have come through our doors who are struggling because they didn't have that father figure. Or we will see a mother there who like, my son, he's playing up, he's all over the place because there's no father figure there. For men, we're talking about men's mental health here specifically, it is so incredibly important to have some sort of father figure.
And that program I gave the example of, I notice too often the car that should be out in the road doing lessons is just sitting in a car park. So it's been underutilized. So, yeah, so that's
mm.
where I try and highlight simple things. The investment's already there in the car and it's available, but it's been underutilized. So, yeah, hopefully someone who's listening today might take inspiration and go and check out their local L2P program.
Get
Help
onto
us
it.
become part of the
You know,
solution.
all the resources in the world are useless without people using them. So it's a great point you raise there. And the definition of health is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So it's not just not being sick. It's about thriving and turning up and looking after, attending to your mental health, attending to your physical health, attending to your basic human needs, and getting that social connection. You know, I'm on 40 acres. I don't have any friends up here, but going to the local men's group occasionally. I've stopped going because it was too much for work, and then going to hang out with the men's mental health group. But I go and play golf, or I try and do something. I ring mates back home. I FaceTime people, because I can start to feel when I'm spending too much time by myself. But I need to be proactive.
Yeah, because where I live in Bacchus Marsh, I moved out here because it's where my wife lives. But I'm predominantly a Geelong boy, 60k down the road, and a lot of mates from uni days in Melbourne. And I just had that sense of, isolation creeping in. So I rang a few mates, and one of the best things that I did to help hit that in the head was, two things actually. I had a reunion with my high school mates. Some guys I hadn't seen since 1978, and 16 of us got together for a pub dinner in Geelong. Normally, there's only 4 or 5 of us get together and do a lunch, but we thought, we'll try and get some more boys in. We thought evenings might work better, so evenings did work better. And I kind of avoided the evening thing because then I'll go 60k drive, 8 o'clock at night, dodging kangaroos in the Bacchus Marsh Road. But it's so worth it, just that. Revisiting our past, the high school years weren't bad years, and a lot of belly laughs, just some guys you hadn't seen for a while. Second thing, I had a function when you're down on the Ballerina Peninsula, Nick, check out a place called Cottage by the Sea. It's a wonderful organisation that gives experiences to kids from disadvantaged areas. Sometimes for the first time in their life, they see the ocean when they stay at this place down there. That organisation had a function on the Thursday night. I knew every Friday morning a bunch of my mates from my old Lara Township have a coffee in Geelong. Again, I'm not going to drive from Bacchus Marsh to Geelong 60k for a coffee, but I had a function that's at Queenscliff that Thursday night. Coffee Friday morning, and my daughter lives at Leopold halfway between. So guess where I crashed for the night? So, bang, bang, bang. It was a good social function, quality time with my daughter, and then morning catch up with old guys who I grew up with. So you can kind of...
And what you're talking about there, mate, is that level 2 work. It's that we can so easily run this narrative. Oh, it's too hard. There's all these limits, all this resistance that we put in place. Oh, I can't mentality, and that's that destructive pathway. But that level 2 stuff I was talking about before, you really got involved, and you went, this is what I can do, and this is why it will work, and this is what the effort I can put into it. And that's that self-agency. No one can do that for you except for you.
We've been, I've had some clients recently talking about this social connection. Nikki, there's always like a theme, the theme of the month or whatever. Yeah. And it's around this exact topic. And it's quite funny when you dig into it, because they'll say, look, I just feel like I'm not having enough, social connection. I'm only around, my immediate family and that kind of thing. And I see these, families going away together, camping and that kind of thing. And I wish that was me. And I'm like, oh, well, why isn't that you? Like, why do you think? And they go, well, I've never asked anyone. And when anyone's asked me, I've said no, because I like to keep people at an arm's length. And I'm like, so you might be the problem here. It's like, yeah, it is.
Well,
And
it's
it's
so
because,
irrational, aren't we?
yeah, well, it's because we're, there's a protection mechanism where we just kind of want to keep people
Yeah.
at arm's length. And
Yeah, a bit
so
hardwired that
then,
way.
yeah, and so then we're robbing ourselves of these beautiful connections. But once they're aware of that, they can start to. And so this one client actually actively then reached out to a family, and they're going to go away camping over New Year's. So,
Fantastic.
Awesome. It's
I've got
like,
a
yeah,
question.
no one can do the work but you. So, yeah. Yes, Has, what's the question?
Well, I don't want to, run up on Tommy without asking some big questions here. So, Tony,
Right,
from
let's
someone
go.
who you've been educating us already here about, Beyond Blue, you're also part of Are You OK? I can see you got the signs and stickers up in the background. From your perspective, your subjective perspective, what do you think needs to change on this, government funding, foundation level? Like, if we were to fast forward 5 years and things were starting to move in the right direction when it comes to mental health,
If
what does that
Tony
look
was the
like for you?
authority, what would
We're making you
happen?
the authority, Tony. What needs to change?
Well, I would suggest that Are You OK? That organisation is a very efficient way of getting a message out there. I understand they've only got about 16 staff, but they've got the profile probably similar to Beyond Blue. And so I think that's kind of, looking at their model and
So what's the ripple effect of something like Are You OK? As an organisation, talking about at the coalface, is Are You OK as an organisation, do you think they're impacting on those numbers that we were talking about earlier?
I think both Beyond Blue and Are You OK are helping with increasing awareness. And what kind of goes
Awareness of what? Awareness of what?
Awareness of being able to talk about the issue, and and overcoming stigma is a big thing. I like the way Are You OK has evolved from a one-day event to multiple things throughout the year. Like there's in the transport sector, there's a rail Are You OK day, and a lot of the recent messaging has been along the lines of make every day an Are You OK day. I kind of put a bit of a spin on Are You OK? And some of the examples I gave earlier, I say, well, don't forget to do a bit of RAK, random act of kindness, hand in hand with Are You OK? So, but then you've got the on the ground stuff.
So there's different levels here. There's the awareness level, then there's the triage level, and then there's the education level. So all of those different sort of sectors need to be sort of working hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, and there's got to be like Beyond Blue is essentially Melbourne based and has that ripple effect of what it can do out of Melbourne. Are You OK is Sydney based, so you get a bit of a ripple out of Sydney. But there's got to be local, easily accessible things too, and that's where at the far end, what I do and what you guys are doing, that's the local service, but it's probably not as well funded as some of these other organisations, and so it's challenging. It can be really overwhelmed with what to do, but if I had the magic wand, I would be reducing the budget of the big organisations and making sure that the same amount, not extra money, is spread across local regional areas. It's kind of done in a way through what they call PHNs.
Private health networks.
Yeah, but again, they're a bit bureaucratic, and I think they seem to fund other bureaucratic organisations. I'm not sure if they do too many organisations like ours. I scratch the surface with them, but you look at all the paperwork, the forms, it's too hard. I just want to keep it simple and do what I do. And that's, I suppose, what sparked my interest when you guys mentioned that Holt. I'm not sure what he did to get his funding.
He was rubbing shoulders with the then Minister of Health, and then just right time, right place, and but I've heard that it was sort of a golden handcuff as well, because you get $2.5 million funding, you've got to report where every dollar of that's going, and
absolutely, you've got to quit it,
Yeah. So,
And
it's
that's
great
what
in theory. I've got 2.5 million, but there's a lot that comes with that too.
Yeah, but so somewhere in between, maybe there's other organisations, or he's a small organisation. Should he be collaborating so there's not so many on the ground people like him?
Well, we had a dinner. Who was there? There was me, boys from Trademark, Jeremy from Holt was there, Adam Velasco, I think he was there, and so there was a few of us, a few different organisations there having this dinner, and you left there, and it was all noise, and then absolute, radio silence after. That's not. I'm not throwing shade at anyone there. It's just we're all running our own businesses or charities or whatever. But you look at the effect of them, and 2.5 million to go and speak at breakfasts on trade sites and whatnot. And having been there, you just like, everyone's doing the best they can. So you can't sit there and pot anyone and say you're not doing a good job or whatever, because that's not fair and right. So everyone's doing the best they can.
The randomness of how he managed to get his funding, and there might be another hold out there that could do just the same stuff, who has not got access to that kind of funding. So yeah, and it probably breaks down because the government is got the pot of gold and they're dispersing it, and what you have to go through to get into that pot is difficult. And the other big picture thing is Victoria, it's obviously safe labour everywhere, and I've seen in Geelong where there's some very safe labour seats in low socioeconomic areas, all the on-the-ground services, or a lot of on-the-ground services, they're just losing their state funding because of the mess in central Melbourne with all the major projects running over budget, and the money that's been blown to not go to not to have the Olympics and all that. So it's hard to be optimistic about who's going to pay for stuff. So I think my message would be, not saying I'm the be all and end all, but I'm mucking around on the side. I'm not costing public dollars, but I think I'm making a difference. So maybe if you can just make a difference in your own patch and start off with one person, then two persons, that's part of the solution. If we
many hands make like work.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's really important what you said as well. It's like we might start a private thing because we see, hey, there's a real missing piece of the mental health care puzzle here. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make something that fulfills that need. But then if I am then to go for funding with that, because people like who came into Myndfit and said, I can't afford it, well, now I'm going to try and be eligible for funding. I have to completely manipulate and morph my original idea into something different in order to tick all those boxes to gain funding. So now this thing that sort of came from the heart and what I believe is fulfilling a purpose, and it is, now has to become something different if I want to be able to get this funding. So it's a real systemic issue, and I think it's also getting the right information at the right time to people. I did a talk a couple of months ago for some, big company in the UK. And, the guy reached out and he goes, yeah, we've got a wellness week or wellness month or whatever. Can you talk on addiction and mental health? And, we'll pay you a bunch of money. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. But it's like, and because they have these quotas that we have to spend this much on this wellness week. And I was sitting there doing it and I'm trying to get people revved up, but it's like they're sitting at work on a fucking Monday morning or something, and maybe one or two people that really resonated with, and a few people reached out to me private and said it was great. But I'm sitting there whilst I was doing it going, this isn't probably the right time and place. This is the wrong information for these people at this point.
The motivation behind it was wrong from the start. It was just a box ticking exercise. We have to.
That's what all these large companies. It's this exact same thing.
We've started doing corporate training workshops and going into organisations to reintegrate people after COVID and to improve the psychological safety of the workplace and everything. And one of the things we say in our initial meeting is, if this is just a box ticking exercise for you, we're not interested, because it's gonna, and that's a tough one, because even if it changes one person, then it's enough, you know. So, but we also want to make sure that it's not you actually know what it is that you're doing, and your intentions for doing it are you know to help people. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'd be a bit wary there about when you're describing that scenario. I was thinking, be wary of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
you
yeah.
might potentially knock a gig back, knock a bit of income back, because it doesn't quite fit your principles and morals and so on. But
But you're trying
be
to
wary of
change the culture as well. So you've got to have a stance. You've got to, you know, the standard you walk past is the standard that you accept. So it's let's get people, you know, genuinely interested in improving the mental health culture of their workplace versus just, oh yeah, let's just tick a box and go on for the next thing.
Well, thinking about probably a good phrase to wrap things up a bit is I like to drop in where I can this phrase: the best exercise you can do is to help someone else who's down to get up again. So that kind of fits, I think, what Nick was trying to achieve in the organisation of fixing the culture, helping the culture, and it's just something I try and live by too.
Yeah, and it comes back to a lot of your ethos of that win-win, Tony, where it's like, you know, we're obviously helping someone who's down by helping them get up. First of all, we make sure we're okay, but then also, you know, we're deriving benefit from that. You know, it really does feel great to help someone up. It's kind of a little bit selfish at the end of the day, and that's okay because it is a win-win.
It's it's ongoing maintenance for me to do that, but the initial thing is, you shouldn't do that just because you don't get a benefit. I said, well, maybe it's a win-win. So where's the problem? But that's part of the perception, the change.
The quickest way to feel better is to go and do something for someone else. It's just it's a no-brainer. So go and knock on an elderly person's door and say, can I do anything for you? Can I mow your lawns? Can I take the dog for a walk? Can I do something? And it's not, there's no terms and conditions on it. There's no, and then I want this in return. It's I'm giving freely. And when you give freely, what you start noticing is that you receive freely as well. You start, you said it's selfish, Hass, and it sort of is because we're getting something out of it, but that's not the driving force behind it.
What you just described then, Nick, is one of the things that Are You OK did really well during the pandemic. They produced a template, A4 with four little, you cut into four little messages where you just put it in the leather box or under the front door of a neighbour. And it could be the elderly person. Say, look, can I help you go to the shops? If you can't get the shops, can I walk your dog? Anything else I can do for you? Because people were stuck at home, particularly the elderly were isolated. So again, that's simple on the ground solution stuff.
There was a story getting around where a lady was living with her daughter, and they had an elderly neighbour, and she kept going over once a week to ask, "Oh, can I borrow some salt?" And the daughter said, "No, we've got heaps of salt. It's just stockpiling salt. We don't even use that much salt. Why are you going over there?" She said, "It's not about the salt. It's about, this woman is of value to the community, and it's a social interaction. It's engagement." I just loved the philosophy behind it. I thought it was really beautiful, and it's so simple. It doesn't cost you anything except 5 minutes of your time. So I feel changed. I feel
You look changed. Look at you.
No, there's been a shift. I wanted to have a conversation on the mental health charities and landscape and everything because I felt stuck, and I feel liberated. I feel free. There is a place for everything, and I confess I was caught up in, and because it's so important to me, the creating change and reducing the numbers and everything. But the Are You OKs and the Beyond Blues and the Holts and the Trade Mutts and the Centre for Healing and the Tony McManus and all of this stuff, it's all part of the ecosystem, and it all has a place. And if you change one person's life or one person's day, then that's enough. So power be to all of it.
I feel like I'm watching a butterfly emerge from its cocoon right now. I'm in awe. This is beautiful to see.
I feel, as I said, I feel liberated. I feel it's just wonderful, and I'm experiencing a deep sense of gratitude for all of those people working in the field and doing the best that they can. And some days we knock it out of the park and get it right. Other days we sort of miss the mark and don't do what can be done, but all of that's okay. So thanks for coming on, Tone. Cheers.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you, Tony. Thanks for coming on, mate. We know you got to head off to the construction site and speak to those guys and girls there. But we just want to say thanks so much for coming on, for sharing openly and honestly, and just thanks so much for reaching out to Nick after that podcast that we did, because it's just great to connect with you, mate.
Oh, no, I've enjoyed the chat, lads, and keep up the good work at your end, because, I think the kind of podcast that you guys put out, it's such an important way of getting messages out there. And, my experience of stumbling across you when I was doing that 1 hour drive from home to work was gold. So
how did you get onto it? How did you stumble across it, by the way?
I don't recall looking for it. I think it's more just in my podcast feed. It might come up as a recommendation. And, I must confess to not being very woke. The title got me in a bit, and it just happened. So
I'd say otherwise, Tony. I think you are woke, and I think we are woke, and it's not in the mixed up Americanized way now. It's all woke means is awakened to this way of living, and people that are in that consciousness, and you are definitely in that space, mate. You can see things as they are and what can be done. You're giving. It's more of a spiritual path, and so I think you're woke as fuck, mate.
It's WAF.
I was thinking, I haven't got pronouns and all that kind of stuff, so I was kind of putting that into it, but maybe my wrong.
I chatted with Nick about 6 months ago. I'm like, should we change the name? Because I don't want to get us mixed up with this American woke culture bullshit, but we're staying with it. And it's got Tony on, so we're glad we have stayed with it.
Yeah.
All good, boys.
Tony, before we say goodbye, Tony, is there anywhere you want to point people to, anywhere to get in touch with your work?
Look, if you Google my name, Tony McManus Mental Health, that will find me. If you don't put mental health at the end, you'll end up with an Irish folk singer. So he won't.
Either way, you're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
And maybe try and find Connect to Grow on Facebook. I'm happy to throw my mobile out there. 0417 33 4434 will get me.
Oh, good number.
Ripper.
It's like nice digits.
Still got that nice sync to it.
I've got phone number.
If you're listening, no matter where you are, if you're listening to this and you're feeling a bit disconnected or whatever, hopefully Tony's inspired you to either reach out to him and say, mate, what can I do? And just have that chat to start the ball rolling, or just go out in your community and find a way to make it better just by being you and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, well, just on that point, on my Facebook page, Connect to Grow, the Contact Us button doesn't come to me. It actually goes to the search engine for the biggest database in Australia of volunteering opportunities. So that can help you maybe find something in your local area that might be of appeal to you, like the LTP.
Right. Well, I can't wait till our first episode of the new year. I can talk to the the listeners about my volunteer work and over the Bellarine Peninsula and those 3 days, and that's going to feel amazing for me. But hopefully, it feels great for this person I'm working with as well. So
maybe they should document the process. What do you reckon?
Maybe they should. Okay. Maybe it's a tax write-off now. Maybe it's.
I think we need to talk more offline because I've just got some other odd thoughts that have come up that I might email you about. So
no worries.
Thanks again, boys.
All right, Tony.
Take care, mate.
All the best, mate.